The Chiefs finally did it. They made a big move by trading for Frank Clark, the defensive end from the Seattle Seahawks. This is perfectly fitting their need of a pass rush after trading away Dee Ford. Frank Clark fits perfectly into this defensive scheme, and I think he could be the biggest impact player for the Chiefs next year besides Patrick Mahomes. Let's get into the film breakdown and let me explain why I believe this. Breaking down the first sack here, we're going to be looking at Frank Clark lined up outside of Andrew Whitworth. And on this play, we're going to be more specifically looking into Frank Clark's speed rush and his quick first step. So as we see, he's lined up as almost a wide 9 technique outside of Andrew Whitworth on the right side of the screen here. So as we highlight here, as the ball is snapped, he explodes off the ball, and he is so quick that it makes Andrew Whitworth open up his hips and almost begin to chase Frank Clark. Frank Clark knows this is happening, is lined up outside very wide, and this quick get off is making Whitworth open up his hips and begin to chase. So now it's just kind of a race to who can get to the corner. So as we see here, we have Frank Clark's left arm highlighted because he's going to be using this arm to chop Andrew Whitworth's arms as soon as Whitworth tries to throw a punch. And as we see here, Andrew Whitworth's legs are circled because it just highlights how his hips are open and he's beginning to chase Frank Clark. So as the play picks back up here, we're going to see that in slow motion, Frank Clark's going to chop Andrew Whitworth's arms, wrap around the pocket, and strip sack Jared Goff. Makes it look so easy yet so effective. So let's flip gears out of the whole speed rush aspect and see how he converts that speed into power, or just take a look at his bull rush in general. So Frank Clark, once again, as we can see, is lined up outside of the left tackle here in almost a wide 9 technique. Once again, kind of the constant fear in left tackles is Frank Clark's great speed and great get off on the ball, which is going to they're going to try to defend that by running him out of the back of the pocket, as we see what's being set up here. Frank Clark threw a punch into the chest of the left tackle, is starting to sink his pad level because we see the left tackle trying to shuffle him out and around the pocket. Frank Clark's going to use this to his advantage because he's setting up a bull rush. Frank Clark feels it, puts his hand on the chest, and now we see he sets everything up perfectly. He starts to drive forward, and instead of that left tackle dropping his anchor, or as what you would use your outside leg to drop down and kind of stop the momentum of a pass rusher to keep the pocket firm, he's shuffling, doesn't have any power to stop this momentum. So Frank Clark brings one hand, the second hand, and starts to load up as we see here, and he's going to explode out, throw the tackle to the ground, and get an easy sack on Josh Rosen. This is just great technique by Frank Clark and how to really abuse a power rush and how he can capitalize off people that are abusing and trying to stop his speed rush nonstop. It's a great play by Frank Clark. So switching gears back to the first play, we saw that Frank Clark has a great speed rush, but what is his counter move off that speed rush? We saw how he could convert speed to power, but what happens if he's already committed to the speed rush? How can he counter it? So that's what we're going to be looking at on this play. We see him lined up as a wide 9 technique once again, way outside of the left tackle. So at the snap of the ball here, Frank Clark's going to get a great get off, but we're going to freeze the frame here. As you see, Frank Clark's inside arm is prepared to chop and then wrap around the corner and get to Josh Rosen. But look at the left tackle's positioning here. Frank Clark feels this. The left tackle has his hips opened and his hips almost turned back to the back of the pocket, which is going to try to force and run Frank Clark out of the pocket. Due to this overcommitment, Frank Clark uses this to his advantage and abuses this. So he swipes, but then he uses that outside arm and hooks the back of the left tackle's back and just spins right back inside on for an easy sack on Josh Rosen. This is perfect technique as how to spin move back to the inside. So quickly recapping what we saw of the film breakdown today. So we saw a very, very polished edge rusher who was very efficient with 3 moves. The speed rush, the speed to power, and then countering the speed rush by spin moving back to the inside. These 3 moves alone, being able to be so polished at these can make you an elite edge defender. What's even better about this is Frank Clark is only 25 years old. He's been in the league for 4 years. He's just now entering his prime. And we've seen insane production out of this man in the last 3 years. In total, he's had 13 sacks this previous year, 9 sacks the year before that, and 10 sacks 3 years ago. Now, just now entering into his prime, I'm excited to see what he can do with the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, bringing up that point, let's discuss what I think his role will be with the Kansas City Chiefs. And that is, he's going to be filling some big shoes of the Dee Ford pass rushing role. So we've seen this past offseason, the Chiefs signed Steve Spagnuolo, a new defensive coordinator who's going to be switching this game from most likely a 3-4 to a 4-3. And because of that, we saw Dee Ford get traded. And that kind of means there was a big hole for a big pass rushing need, because we saw that Dee Ford had a huge role last year as a pass rusher. Some very incredibly clutch sacks, especially late in the year last year. And that Colts game, he had a very good strip sack, things like that. All year long, that's been going on from the past year. Those are some big shoes to fill. Dee Ford was a premier defensive player for this team, and I think the Chiefs did the perfect thing trading for Frank Clark. I think Frank Clark can fill in those shoes and possibly develop into something bigger than Dee Ford. I think he can expand into a huge role on this defensive team, and you could see him becoming a new leader and possibly a captain for this defensive team. Obviously, we've seen them have extreme success with Patrick Mahomes and everything, so everybody's kind of ignoring the defensive side of the ball, but we've seen that they need help on the defensive side of the ball. Remember against the Patriots in the AFC Championship? They couldn't stop Tom Brady in that run game. Frank Clark, he's here to help fix that. I know I didn't really break down the run game aspect of Frank Clark, and that's basically because I really wanted to focus on the pass rushing and him filling the shoes of Dee Ford's pass rushing capability. But Frank Clark is more than capable of stopping the run, as we see here, as we're just having some highlights run through. Of course, it's highlights, not super accurate, but he's great and aggressive at shedding blockers and getting in the backfield. He has a great get-off, so he can easily penetrate gaps and stop the run. But, again, all this leads into the factor that he's going to be filling the roles of Dee Ford. And as we can all, if anybody followed the Chiefs last year, we all understand that Dee Ford had a huge role for that team last year, especially helping anchor that defense, who struggled a bit last year, but he was the really good bright spot of that defense. So, the young quarterback in Patrick Mahomes blossoming, the trading for Frank Clark, a 25-year-old premier edge rusher, they got their two dudes for both sides of the ball for many years to come. I'm excited to see how everything develops this next year. I'm really hoping that Frank Clark has the same success or even more success than he did in Seattle. I'm excited to watch this young man develop in the Kansas City Chiefs defense, especially under the new defensive coordinator, Steve Spagnuolo. And of course, I'm excited to see what Patrick Mahomes does. But in my opinion, I think Frank Clark may be able to make a claim for himself as defensive MVP for this Kansas City Chiefs team next year. But I'm going to stop rambling about that stuff. Let me know your guys' thoughts down in the comments. What do you guys think about the Frank Clark trade and the big $105 million a year contract? Was it deserving? Was it as big as I'm making it sound? Or do you guys think it was kind of minimal? Do you think they should have drafted someone in the draft? Let me know. I'll see you guys in the next one.